like to call them the hanging gardens. And it illustrates how rehabilitated geographically is this giant, or I guess geologically, is a giant granite rock with a temperate rainforest sitting on top of it. And if this is the coastline, you see how steep it is? And this same structure that holds that road up holds this dock up as we drive over. And you guys will notice next to that is Elliott Street. That staircase is 175 steps. That's our tallest staircase street in town. We'll have those staircase streets all over town. The city will maintain them as streets, so they replace the boards so they get rotted or disappear. And they'll clear the snow during the winter, get about 2 feet of snow in the winter. All the mailmen who deliver mail up these routes, they all have really great legs to running on the stairs. And all the residents have really great memories. We only forget how to use one. Now these are our fisheries that we're driving by. Our left side, these warehouse buildings are fisheries. The busiest of which is E.C. Phillips and Sons. We're going to go outside when we're in the water. We're going to go out to the back with E.C. Phillips and Sons. We're going to try to see into what they call the slime line. And if anyone's looking to transplant, you want to move to Ketchikan, there the slime line, I know that they're always hiring. They pay minimum wage, on your feet all day in 38 degrees. Nice and cool in there, scooping fish guts. So if anyone's looking for a job, I know they're always hiring. And you can take your paycheck down the street to the only mall in southeastern Alaska, the Newtown Plaza. Not only is it our only mall, but it's the only amusement park that has not one but 2 working escalators. Yes. There's a couple recognizable franchises there. There's a McDonald's, Godfather's Pizza, Taco Time, Subway, and you gotta have your Starbucks. In fact, we're half of Alaska's population lives here in southeastern Alaska. That's why they call this area an extension of Seattle. You gotta have your coffee when you live in weather like this. You gotta have it pick me up, you know. So that's why they call Ketchikan the Seattle of Alaska. We get about 5 hours of dark during the summer. The sun will set at 11 p.m. and it'll rise at 4 a.m. During the winter, it'll be the opposite of that. We'll get about 5 hours of light. And the further away you get from the equator, the more intense the phenomenon becomes. So you get to the Arctic Circle and you get 24 hours of dark during the winter, 24 hours of light during the summer. Another natural phenomenon that exaggerates the further you get from the equator is the tidal fluctuations. So if you're in Hawaii, they don't have much of a tide there, right? Because they're so close to the equator. But here we have a 15-foot tidal variation from our highest high tide to our lowest low tide. And speaking of the tides, we've now arrived at Bar Harbor. Welcome everybody. This is our third and final harbor of the tour today. This is where we become a boat, the moment we've all been waiting for. I'm sure. Who knew that we were? Did everybody know we were on a boat? I didn't want anyone to be shocked and freak out in terror. This is all going according to plans. Even though it is mine and Captain Lance's first day, I think we're doing really well. Oh, it's Captain Lance's second day, so he's done this before. That's good to know, right? It's assuring. Did you guys know that every bus in Ketchikan can enter the harbor right here at this ramp? Every bus in Ketchikan. We're the only one that comes back out, though. When we're in the water, we're going to talk about the fishing industry. We're going to talk about the wildlife that's out there that we sometimes see, where we see it, how we see it, what it's doing. Talk about the fishing that people are fishing for. Talk about the geography a little bit, the surrounding islands, the exterior islands that protect the inside passage. And then we have a bunch of random Alaska facts we'll talk about too. But as we enter the water, the Coast Guard regulates we all buckle up. So you guys will reach to your left and grab that seat belt and then pull it across your belt and buckle it into the right-hand side. I only got about half of you.
A real sharp crew.
I just want to make sure about the wake. Alright, everyone put your hands in there. There are no seatbelts this time. Keep in mind that seatbelts and life preservers, they don't work well together. We're now a sea vessel. I warned you guys we were coming into the water. Welcome aboard. The left side is now our port side. Right? Do you remember that left and port both have 4 letters in the name? Our right side is our starboard side. Are you guys northbound or southbound? So you guys are headed to Victoria over Vancouver? Victoria. Oh, shoot out. So there's different.
Oh, yeah, we're going to Skagway tomorrow.
Oh, wonderful. So let's talk about some of the fishing boats. We're already seeing, we're actually passing by this orca song right there. You guys see the orca song? That's at our 5 o'clock position right now. That's a purse seiner. By and large, purse seiners are the most common fishing vessel that we're going to see today. So keep your eyes peeled for purse seiner. You can distinguish a purse seiner by the big skiff on the back of the boat. They also have a big crane and a very large net, usually. And what they'll do is they'll take that skiff and they'll attach itself to the net, and they'll go in a big circle in the water, and then reattach that net to the primary vessel. Then cinch the top of the net closed like a purse. That's why they call it a purse seiner. And they use that big crane to come down and grab the net, and they go hunt the fish in the water at once. These guys are so effective at fishing that they actually need help. They need assistance. And that's where our tenders come in handy. So these boats all along here are tenders. That one there about the middle of the harbor with the machinery on the back, that's a tender. I'll start there. You can tell it's a tender because it has the machinery in the back. It has a vacuum and it has some cranes. And so the tenders will bring, say this, my left hand is the purse seiner, he's fishing. The tender will bring supplies to the purse seiner, drop off supplies with the cranes, and then they'll use the vacuum to suck all the fish up, and then they'll take the fish back to the port. And so the purse seiner can just sit there constantly fishing. And the tender will drop off supplies and bring up the fish. Drop off supplies and bring up the fish. They use that machinery on the back of their boat to process the fish. So they can start filleting, gutting the fish, flash freezing them in nitrogen, and then they'll take them, by the time they get to the fishery, they're ready to go to the consumer. So that's the role that tenders fill. This perseverance. This is another tender. And you can tell the perseverance of the tender because he's got a vacuum on the back, he's got a crane. He'll use that red crane for moving supplies back and forth. The next vessel that we'll talk about is our least common vessel. That's at the very end of this harbor. That blue boat is a gill netter. So those are our least common fishing vessel. The gill netters are distinguishable by the big metal spool on the back of their boat. So they'll have a big metal spool with a net wrapped up in it. And as they drag along, they'll turn that spool and they'll drop the net out the back of their boat and they'll drag it behind them. And as they go, the net will catch itself because it has buoys on the top and weights at the bottom. So it kind of pats itself in the water. The fish will swim into it. I can get that for you. The fish will swim into it.
Daddy's gonna get it.
I can get that for you. I got you. All right, here. The fish will swim into that net. Does anybody else need help with their porthole? We're good? All right, the fish will swim into that net, and they don't see the net, of course. They don't have very good eyesight. And they get caught. They try to back out, and their gills get caught in the net. That's why they call it a gill netter. And then the fishermen will watch the buoys at the top of their net. And the more those buoys move, the more fish must be caught in the net. So once those buoys are shaking and rattling, then they'll turn the spool, and they'll bring the whole net back on board. So that's how gill netters work. Gill netters aren't legal in the lower 48, so they're only allowed up here in Alaska. So we've covered gill netters, purse seiners, tenders. That rocket bent right there, that's a gill netter. Notice the metal spool on the back of the rocket bend. Our third and final fishing vessel is a troller. And you guys can distinguish a troller by the one boom. It'll have one boom on either side. So these are poles that go up into the air on the sides of the vessel. Not to be confused with the mast. They'll often have masts as well, but those are in the center of the vessel. The trollers will have booms on either side of the mast, and they'll cast them out at a 45-degree angle. And then they'll have lines, hundreds of feet long, dragging from the vessel, usually 3 or 4 from each boom. So when it's out in the water, it'll look like a capital Y or a V. And it'll have lines dragging in the water that are hundreds of feet long, and then a hook every 10 or 15 feet. Once those lines hook up, they'll pull them out, and they're catching 30 to 50 fish at a time per line. So remember the gill netters and the purse seiners are catching hundreds of fish at a time. The trollers only catch about 50 fish at a time. So it's a lower quantity, but higher quality. Sort of fishing operation. Now we've exited the harbor. And you can tell because these man-made structures on our left and our right, these are wave bridges. And where we're at low tide, what's our tide at? Alright, so the tide is coming in. It's still kind of low, and because it's low, we'll be able to see. There was 2 fishermen that were in a competition here in the Narrows, catching those fish one day. And they had a few too many drinks, so they dropped their anchors and they took their skiff home for the night. They came back in the morning and found that they had docked their boats outside of the harbor, and there had been a storm, and they lost not only all their fish, but both of their sea vessels. So if you look to your left, they call this Shipwreck Cove.
Oh, wow.
You guys see those 2 sea vessels? We're fortunate because at high tide, that vessel that's closer to us and on the left, it gets about 2 feet underwater at high tide.
Oh, wow.
So during high tide, you can only see the mast of that second boat further away from us. If anyone's looking to buy a boat, I could broker a deal 2 for 1. Just needs a little bit of TLC, a little bit of attention, mechanic special. So if you guys look up the hill here, you can see that big white building on land. That big white building with no windows. You guys see it? Any guesses what that big ominous looking building is?
High school?
With windows. The windowless building might be.
School.
High school.
Any other guesses?
Hospital.
You guys are on point. It is. Usually people guess that it's a jail. Yes, and I say exactly. That's our high school. You were on point. It is exactly right. It is a high school, and it has no windows because it doubles as a tsunami shelter. We have a float plane on our right-hand side, folks. So if you have a right-hand side, you'll see a float plane run right past. Hopefully, it's a nice big Kodak moment. These are not inexpensive for us to arrange. You know, it costs us a lot to have these flyovers done. Float plane. I used to call it seaplane also. I've been here for about 4 months. The first month or 2 I was here, I was calling them seaplanes, and I got corrected that seaplanes will land with their hull in the water, and they'll have pontoons on their wings, and the float planes will be held out of the water by the pontoons on their feet. This North Rim Bank is a terrible spot for a Burger King with our high winds, and we know this because it used to be a Burger King, and people would go to place their orders in that first window, but all they could hear was with fries. Something with fries. And they would go to pay for their food in that first window and their money would blow away. And then they would go to receive their food, just ready to eat and frustrated, and then their food would blow away in that last window. So their money was blown away, their food was blown away, they couldn't hear what they're ordering, it was a trifecta of bad business. The Burger King went out of business. The bank bought the building, and the story goes, the fishermen, the local legends, you cast a line right here, there's a good chance you'll catch a whopper. Okay. Now folks, the salmon are out here. If you guys watch the water line long enough, you will inevitably see salmon jumping out of the water. I can't point them out for you because as soon as I point it out, it's already over. They're back in the water. But if you watch the water line long enough, you'll inevitably see salmon jumping out of the water and belly flopping. These are pregnant female salmon, right? Most likely king salmon, they have 2,000 to 5,000 eggs in their belly. The reason why they're belly flopping is they're trying to break up those eggs and relieve some of that pressure in their stomach. I also like to think that they're trying to practice when they get to rainbow falls. They'll jump really high, surprisingly high. Yeah, either side of the window, if you look out, you'll inevitably see salmon jumping. Salmon in the water, obviously there's halibut, there's rockfish, there's clownfish, there's cod, there's flatfish. I actually have a chart of all the fish we have. But predators will come searching for these salmon. So that's one of the reasons why we go to the backside of the fishery, is because when the fisheries are done with the guts of the salmon, the chum, they just dump those chum buckets back into the water. And so that attracts predators. So our best odds of seeing wildlife is to go to the backside of this fishery. They'll have seals. Yeah, you got it. We'll get harbor seals. You guys seen harbor seals before? Who's seen a harbor seal? Yeah. Super common, especially in Alaska. You'll probably see them on your cruise if you haven't already. The harbor seals will come in here fishing for salmon just like us. And you can tell when they're stocking. The harbor seals will swim upside down when they're stocking fish. And there's so many fish here that they won't even really pursue the fish. They'll just swim upside down until a fish comes close to them, and then they'll just take nips at them until they catch one.
Yeah, right.
We have more eagles. We have more eagles in southeastern Alaska than anywhere else in the world. So we have good odds of seeing eagles. We see eagles, but they also follow salmon upstream. So we've seen less and less salmon as the season progresses. We should see more and more whales as the season progresses because they head south during their migration. They go to Hawaii during the winter and they like to spend their summers up here, so not too bad. But this channel is about 30 to 50 feet deep where we're at right now. This is the shallow end, of course. The deepest end of the channel is over there in the middle. It's about 350 feet deep, and it's deep enough for white humpback whales to come through, as well as orcas. So I personally have seen orcas only twice on my tours in like 3 months being here. So humpback whales only once. We've had kua porpoises that come around sometimes. Sort of like the cross between an orca and a dolphin. I've only seen them once, porpoises. We also have not great white sharks, but a cousin of the great white shark, a salmon shark that lives in these waters. I have a bunch of pictures. I will get them out, and I'll pass them around. This is one of my favorite pictures. In fact, I'm instructed to pass this picture around on every tour. This is a 240-pound halibut that the owner caught with his son. So his bragging rights, he has instructed me to pass this around at every tour. We have Dungeness crab and we have king crab in the water, but not quite enough to support a commercial operation. So these boats that you see out here, they're fishing for fish, but there's no crab boats out here. There are personal operations, people do it as a hobby. We also have our salmon sharks. So there's our salmon shark and our Dungeness crab. What's that? How long do the salmon sharks get? Good question. 7 to 9 feet, 8 or 9, at that range. Sounds realistic. We have gooey ducks. You know what a gooey duck is? Yeah. There are gooey duck farms in the southeast. They're actually clams. And they'll burrow down to the sand. You can see them blowing bubbles. If you dig down, you can pull them out of the sand. They sell for 20 to 80 bucks a pound. They're really a delicacy. If you agitate them, they'll spray at you. They'll spray their goo at you. They can live up to 200 years old. Wow. And they can grow up to 3 feet long. Here's a 3-foot long gooey duck with the owner. He's a diver, a hobbyist. He likes to dive for crab. And the Alaskan marine mammal. Does anyone know what the Alaskan marine mammal is? This is going to be on the test later, so I want to warn you guys. Alaskan marine mammal. I'll show you a picture, see if that helps. This picture has always bothered me, though. It looks like it's like almost cartoonish. But this is the Alaskan bowhead whale. The bowhead whale. They call it a bowhead whale because of the shape of its mouth. I'll pass those pictures around, but I want to take this opportunity to point out Deer Mountain, which we can't even see. Remember when we were in Bear Valley, we were on Deer Mountain Street. So we were driving on the base of Deer Mountain. Deer Mountain is our tallest peak, and so we have this ridge line of trees right here outside of our port side window, but that's not Deer Mountain. Deer Mountain is just beyond that. You see the second line of trees, that's Deer Mountain going up into the clouds. And they say it's a natural barometer. If you can see the top of Deer Mountain, then it's going to rain. And if you can't see the top, then it's already raining. Those are our two, believe it or not, those are our two weather conditions here. And it's from the top of Deer Mountain that the village elders, the tribal elders, the Tlingit, the Tzotzil, and the Haida people, they got the name Ketchikan for the thundering wings of an eagle for the Ketchikan Creek. Because it wasn't until 1796 that George Vancouver discovered Revillagigedo for the settlers, and he named the island after the Viceroy of New Spain. Revillagigedo, that's not a very Alaskan sounding name or a very Russian sounding name. So yeah, it was named after the Viceroy of New Spain in 1796. You guys say Rehabilitated? Rehabilitated. It's like Worcestershire sauce.
Yeah.
You just say it fast, and nobody knows if you say it right or wrong. That's what I do. Or you call it Revilica Shores or the Rock. They call it the Rock because it's this giant granite rock. This is Ketchikan Island. Folks, remember Ketchikan Island from earlier? Battle Dolly would hide her booze on Ketchikan Island. And there's actually 200 brave souls that live on Ketchikan Island year round. They all have docks instead of driveways. There's no roads on Ketchikan Island. They're all off-the-grid homesteads. There's no public utilities, so they all have their own power, their own water collection systems. If they go 4 or 5 days without water, that's a drought for them. And it's funny for me because I'm from Utah, so we go 4 or 5 months without water. That's a drought for us. And we'll talk, people will say, oh wow, we really needed that rain. We really needed that rain, you know? And when they say that, they're talking about they need the moisture. So here they say the same thing when it rains. They say, oh, we really needed that rain. We really needed that rain. But in this case, they're talking about the smell. Because the rain rinses away the smell of all the salmon. So it's a little bit different than from being from Utah. We're in the southeastern archipelago of Alaska right now. Remember, if you were to look at a map of Alaska, there'd be the body and then there'd be 2 legs. The lower leg is the southeastern archipelago, which includes over 1,000 islands that we're kind of sauntering around in now. And then there's the Aleutian chain that goes west. So we're the westernmost state because of the Aleutian chain of islands. We're also the northernmost state. Does anybody know what the southernmost state is? It's not a trick question. Hawaii. You see Hawaii or you just get the thing? It is Hawaii. Does anybody know what the easternmost state is? All around the subject? Easternmost state. Maine? Maine? It would be Maine if it wasn't already Alaska. Does that sound right? Does Alaska sound like the easternmost state? Because the Aleutian Islands go so far west that they cross the international date line. And I'll tell you guys another one of my mistakes as a narrator. I've been calling that the prime meridian for about 2 months. That's not the prime meridian. It's actually the opposite of the prime meridian. It's the anti-meridian. So the Aleutian Islands go so far west, they cross the anti-meridian and they enter the eastern hemisphere. The very last 2 islands on the Aleutian chain are the easternmost tip of our state, easternmost tip of our country. And a good way to trick your friends back home into buying you a drink, you wager them that Alaska is the easternmost country. And you just gotta play it off like you're drunk and you're making a mistake. That's what I do, but I'm not in Alaska. Alaska has 15,000 miles of coastline and 650,000 square miles. And we bought in 1867 for $7.2 million. Back then that was 2 cents per acre. If you adjust it for inflation, that's 48 cents per acre, or $151 million in today's money. They bought it from Russia, who almost exhausted. They used it for fur trading. They were hunting the sea otters, and they almost hunted the sea otter to extinction before they figured that they had used Alaska for all of its resources and they sold it to us. William Seward brokered that deal. You ever remember that? They called it William Seward's Folly. They called it a mistake. And it was, I guess, at first until they realized there was gold there. You guys know who discovered gold first in Alaska? Joseph Juneau. The first person discovered gold in Alaska. So fortunate for him, he got a city named after him. The second largest city. We're the 4th largest city. Ketchikan is the 4th largest. Then Fairbanks, then Juneau, and the biggest by large, by far, is Anchorage. Anchorage has 400,000 people. Now our population here in Alaska is only 700,000. So well over half the population lives in Anchorage alone, and we're the 4th largest city with only 14,000 people. So that gives you a perspective of what the rest of the city sizes are in Alaska. You're less likely to have a neighbor here than anywhere else. Now there's a tradition, a rite of passage for the kids. When they're in 8th grade going into 9th grade, they have a graded school project called Survival School. So they have to spend 3 months preparing for this final exam where they learn how to build fires, and they learn how to build shelters, they learn how to tie a knot and catch a fish and gut a fish, all these survival skills. And their final exam, they get separated into boys and girls, right? They get chaperones, and then they get dropped off at an undisclosed location at one of these islands. And they have to survive for 4 days as their final exam. And all they're allowed to bring with them is a coffee tin, and whatever they can fit inside the coffee tin. So they'll bring a fishing line, of course, a tarp, a pocket knife, fire starting utensils, things like that. And then they fill the gaps in with rice and oatmeal and food to eat. And there's another narrator, one of the young ladies that I work with. She actually did this survival school. She was the only person in her group that could start a fire, so she was awarded half of a hot dog. And she had to share it with everybody else. So she said it was the best she said it was the best bite of a hot dog she's ever had. And I like to share that story because it illustrates, first of all, it gives us perspective. We can all enjoy our buffet line a little bit better next time we go through. And it also illustrates the frontier spirit that lives on and the